Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the June 25th meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners. As with most meetings at City Hall, we've had social distancing measures in place, and so we'll be doing this meeting through the video conferencing. A couple of points to note here. For members of the Commission who are phoning in or on video, have your video camera and microphone turned off. When you wish to speak, if you just enter your name on the chat window and you be replaced in the speaking queue. And remember that when you to unmute your microphone and turn on your video when you're speaking. And also, all votes will be conducted through a recorded vote. And we do have delegations. They will be teleconferencing into the meeting. So, on that note, if I could have a motion to approve the public agenda at the call of the chair, please. And remember that when you to unmute your microphone and turn on your video when you're speaking. And also, does anybody want to put a motion forward?
Yes.
We do have delegations there. Okay, so Councilor Young. Anyone opposed to the public agenda at the call of the chair? A motion to approve the public agenda.
Mr. Mayor, you have a echo.
Anyone?
A big
I think
one.
we have a volume issue with Councilor Young. Councilor Young, we really can't hear you.
I've got my microphone.
Opposed to the public agenda.
Okay.
Call the chair. I'm going to try and turn the volume up on this end. Councilor Young, we really can't hear you. You try it again, Councilor Young.
I moved the agenda and I'm still hearing an echo.
Try and turn the volume up on this end. Oh. Okay, we're going to have to get some support here to see if we can get your volume turned up on your end. So we really can't hear you. So we'll just wait for a moment. Try it again, Councilor Young.
Sorry, this is Commissioner Yee. I'll move that motion.
Okay, we're going to have to get some support. So Councilor Young, could you maybe leave and then come back in again? Maybe that might help.
Okay.
Worship on a point of order. A mic check and all of
Yeah, we're going to have to do a mic check here. We're going to get that done now. I can't hear you either, Councilor Murray. Councilor Young, could you maybe leave and then come back in again? Maybe that might help. Okay, we may have, that's better. Councilor Young? Yeah, we're going to have to do a mic check here. We're going to get that done
Yes, I'm here.
now. Okay, we can hear you now. I can't hear you either.
Is now joining.
And there's still a big echo.
Others should check the microphones, make sure they're turned off. Okay, we may have, don't go yet. Okay. Councilor
Is
Young.
now exiting.
So we have on the floor a vote for approval of the public agenda. It's just a timer.
Okay.
And I have these turned off here. I have there and there turned off. And this is turned off here as well. So it should be okay. Councilor Young?
Yes? Yes?
So we're trying to get rid of this echo. But I think you had the floor. You wanted to speak about the agenda?
Well, I moved it, but Jay.
Okay. We're still working on this. Can everyone check to see that their speakers have been turned off? Should do, but you're not. Commissioner Yee, could you speak, please? Commissioner Yee, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Can you turn your microphone on, please?
Off or muted?
You're all muted? Well, usually don't have a double voice here. Does anybody have their speakers on their iPad? You should turn those off and they'll be activated here at City Hall when you ask to speak. Has everyone tried that? So I wonder if someone who's not on the commission, just support from the police service that's actually got this. Inspector Seiferling? So for the administration support for the police service, could you check your phone too and make sure you don't have your speaker on?
Just through the chair, would it be possible to remove all members and fully add them back in, if that's the case?
I didn't, you're getting a bit of a back when you say it again, Councillor?
I was just wondering if we could remove all members that are not in the commission and then bring them back in just to see if that's where it's coming from.
I think you're working now.
I can hear you really well, Councilor.
Okay, so we've lost that echo, which is really good. Okay, so let's proceed. If there's no one opposed to the public agenda to call the chair, that's fine. A motion to adopt the minutes, please.
Vic here, I'll make that motion.
Okay, that's Commissioner Pankratz. Any discussion on the minutes? Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. We're going to proceed with our administrative reports. And I'm going to ask the indulgence of the Commission to move to the public reception survey. The delegation has to leave, so we want to make sure that we have a chance to receive that survey results and ask questions. So I'm going to turn this over to the Chief to introduce, and then we will begin the presentation.
Need to turn this mic on. It comes on automatically. Awesome. Thanks. Well, good afternoon, Your Worship, members of our Board of Police Commissioners, and members of the media and citizens that have joined us here today. We do a biannual community perceptions survey on behalf of our police service. It's a good way for us to reach out into the community and understand what our community's thoughts are and perceptions with regard to safety, with regard to the delivery of service that we provide in the community. This is something that we have done now. This is the 5th survey that we have conducted. Typically, we release this information more in the spring, April, I would say, or May, but given COVID and the fact that we haven't had any public board meetings, this is the first opportunity we've had to do so. We do this really in partnership with the university. We asked them to conduct the survey for us, and so we've got Dr. Nick Jones here today, who works with Dr. Rick Riddell as well from the University of Regina to put this together. So I think without any further ado, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Jones, and he can walk us through the process and the survey's findings.
Dr. Jones, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. As Chief Bray said, this represents the 5th survey that we've done over the past 10 years. It represents an attempt to garner a broad perspective by collating a large number of anonymously collected responses to the same questions. Using the same questions over time permits for us to look at comparisons over time with respect to the things that the Chief had mentioned. The survey looks at public information and social media, police visibility and presence, perceptions of trust and confidence, the perception of contact, which is looking at those who had contact with the police and their responsiveness to that, perceptions of fear of crime, as well as perceptions of the quality of the service that has been provided. The Regina Police Service did not take part in collecting or analyzing the data for the report. They have never had access to the data, nor has it been provided to them. According to the call log at the University of Regina, we've actually contracted out for the survey collection, and we did that with Prairie Research Associates. They made over 13,000 calls to finally arrive at the sample we have of 455 residents in Regina. Given the process that they go through, our response rate is at the higher end of what would be considered normal for this approach. And based on population data from Statistics Canada, the sample size of 455 can be projected to the population with a margin of error of plus or minus approximately 2.85%, 95 times out of 100. With respect to some of the actual results that are presented, I want to just bring everybody's attention to averages reporting above the midpoint of 3 suggest a positive tendency in the respondents' opinions with regard to the questions asked. An average that approaches either 2 or 4 is suggestive but not necessarily conclusive of an outstanding high positive or negative tendency. So for those of you who have a copy of the PowerPoint, switch to slide 3 on the demographic characteristics. As you can see, the city is divided into 3 patrol areas. And one of the things from the outset of the collection of the data when we first met with the Regina Police Service was to ensure that as best we could, we covered the various districts. And you can see the results this time around that it's a pretty even split with 33% from the north, 30% from central, and 36% from south. Indigenous representation in the survey has increased each successive time the survey was administered from 3.8% in 2011 to 4.3% in 2013, 7.7% in 2015, 10.5% in 2017, and again 10.4% in 2019. The decision between 2015 and the 2017 survey was made that we purposefully sample in order to get a good representation of Indigenous voices with respect to their percentages and proportions in the population. So one of the first areas that we look at in the survey is around the information provided to the public and their use of the social media platforms that the Regina Police Service engages with. And the overall percentage of respondents in the RPS web-based platforms from 2011 to 2019 has increased from 14.7% in 2011 to 50.4% in 2019. There's been a little bit of variation with respect to age. There's been a little variation with respect to which platform. So for example, the website in 2011 had about 13.9% of respondents saying that they were visiting that, up to now 33% in 2019, so almost 2.5 times greater. Facebook has seen an increase of almost 11.8 times, and Twitter has increased by 4.5 times over the same period. The older categories of respondents are still seeing the largest amount of growth as people are becoming, we believe, more comfortable with social media platforms, and or the users themselves are getting older and bringing their previous social media habits with them, and their familiarity with them, as obviously over 10 years, some of them might have quite easily changed from a younger age category to an older one. Close to 3/4, 70% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that the RPS provides residents with adequate public safety information, with an overall average of 3.93. And the overall satisfaction with those efforts has increased since 2011. The users of the social media thought that these tools, the various web-based platforms, were very useful to them, with again 70% agreeing or strongly agreeing. Among the users of social media, the average level of satisfaction in 2019, 4.04, is slightly down from what we see in 2017 of 4.09. However, as I just mentioned earlier, as we approach that 4.0 category, we're seeing a suggestion of an outstandingly high tendency. A supplementary analysis compared the per capita rate of police service Twitter followers in cities across Canada with more than 200,000 residents, Interestingly for us, and I'm sure for the Regina Police Service, they had the second highest rate of Twitter followers among this group. And this is suggestive that the Regina Police Service has been successful in utilizing this media platform, given the attention that it is garnering in comparison to some of the other cities of similar size. So if we move to slide 5, we're now looking at the perceptions of visibility and presence of the Regina Police Service in the community. And often higher levels of police visibility may be regarded as a crime deterrent and may also reduce fear of crime. The results of the 4 administrations of the survey do show that about 2/3 of respondents report that the Regina Police Service are a visible presence in their community. All of the waves are virtually identical to each other with regard to this particular question. The residents in the Central Patrol District were slightly more likely than those in the north or the south to report that the police service are a visible presence in their neighbourhood, and that police presence had increased in the previous year. This should be read with a cautionary note, as in total of the 455 residents participating in the survey, only 76, or approximately 17%, across all 3 districts reported this increase, or a perceived increase in presence. The results of all the administrations of the community survey shows that about 2/3 of the respondents report that the Regina Police Service are a visible presence in their community. Although the proportion of respondents agreeing with that statement were somewhat higher in 2019 than in 2011, they are very similar to the prior 2 waves of the survey. When contrasted against the results from the 2005 Sigma survey, the one where questions around the police were actually asked by the City of Regina, the proportion of residents who believe that the police presence was decreasing in their neighbourhood has dropped from 10.7 to 5.1, suggesting that a visible increase in police presence has occurred since then. So on slide 6, we begin looking at and reporting on the trust and confidence in the Regina Police Service, and we compare that over 2011 through to 2019, as obviously, as I said before, having very similar questions, actually identical questions, in the various surveys allows for these comparisons. And if you have the slide in front of you, you can see across demonstrating professionalism, an organization with integrity and honesty, sensitive to the needs of my ethnic group, that they would have confidence in calling 911, and that the Regina Police Service understands the issues that affect the community. We're seeing a fairly consistent increase in those numbers, with some decreases, but again, if you start to look at the means of those and where they sit with respect to the 5-point scale, they're all fairly similar. Higher levels of confidence and trust in the police are important in order to improve and maintain solid police-citizen relationships, which is reported to assist in gaining the cooperation of citizens with the police in a common effort to address crime. The results of all 5 of the indicators of trust and confidence in the Regina Police Service were consistent with the prior 4 waves of the community service, and any inter-year differences, as you can see in the chart when you look at the means, is fairly minor. When we start looking at some of these differences across the different demographic characteristics that we look at, in order to better understand the overall level of trust and confidence, all 5 of those items were added together, therefore giving a possible total of 25 if every respondent strongly agreed with all 5 statements. In order to shed light on the overall levels of trust and confidence, these averages were compared by where the residents lived, their patrol districts, their demographic characteristics including age, ethnicity, gender, perceptions of safety, perception of crime in one's neighborhood, and prior contact with the Regina Police Service, and for some of them, self-reported victimization. With regard to the patrol districts, there were no statistically significant differences between the respondents on the summed 5 questions related to trust and confidence. Indigenous respondents reported a statistically significant lower average across the 5 domains as a whole. With respect to age, there were no statistically significant differences across the age categories. However, contrary to previous Canadian studies, but similar to previous studies that we've conducted in Regina, 18 to 34-year-olds reported a higher values than the 35 to 50-year-olds. Nevertheless, those 55 years and older did report the highest rankings, which is similar to other Canadian studies. Female respondents reported higher levels of trust and confidence in the Regina Police Service, rating the organization higher in every category than their male counterparts. With respect to the perceptions of safety, respondents who ranked Regina as very unsafe had an average of 16.4 on the 25-point scale, whereas respondents who felt very safe averaged 22.2 on that 25% scale, or 25-point scale. The perceptions of crime in one's neighborhood, respondents who indicated that crime in their neighborhoods was increasing had a lower overall trust and confidence in the Regina Police Service than those who said that crime was the same or was decreasing. And both of these differences were statistically significant. Contact with the police is another variable that we looked at, and of the 168 respondents in this survey who reported that they had contact with the Regina Police Service in the prior year, their average trust and confidence was 20.8 of a possible 25, whereas those without contact with the RPS ranked them slightly higher with an average of 21.6. That difference was statistically significant, suggesting that contact with the police was associated with lower levels of trust and confidence in the police. One completely unexpected finding was that respondents who were victims of crime in the previous 2 years ranked the police the same as non-victims, with an average of 21.2 for both of these categories. Those results are encouraging, as Cotter's 2015 study of the 2014 General Social Survey found that victimization was actually a strong predictor of less favorable views of the police. When we look at slide 8, if you're following along, of the 2019 survey respondents, 44.9%, or 204 of them, have had contact with the Regina Police Service in that previous year. Just over half of all of these respondents had reported a crime, called 911, or were a witness to a crime. Of the respondents that had contact with the Regina Police Service, we examined demographic factors such as age, ethnocultural status, gender, and education. In the previous administrations of the survey, Indigenous respondents were more likely to come in contact with the Regina Police Service, but in this survey, this was not the case. Our analysis revealed, however, that the only statistically significant difference in the demographic characteristics was that younger respondents, those between 18 to 34, were more likely to have contact with the Regina Police Service than the older respondents. Although the contact could be for any reason, including attending community or speaking with an officer on a street. So that's one of the pieces that is difficult in the methodology and the way that we conduct the survey, is to really tease out what that contact was and how it might have had that effect. As we move on to slide 9 and we start to look at the responsiveness of the Regina Police Service, When asked, 76% of respondents reported that they were satisfied or very satisfied with the service they had received, with a mean value of 4.11, a slight drop from the previous surveys in 2015 and 2017, which were 4.24 and 4.26 respectively. The past 4 cycles of the survey are suggestive, however, of a fairly stable response, with relatively minor differences and all of the means being above 4.00. Comparisons of the 3 districts, the South, the Central, and North, revealed no statistically significant differences in terms of their satisfaction levels with the service that they received. Similar to the results of the previous community surveys, it appears as though many of the respondents' contact with the Regina Police Service may start and end with civilian personnel. So, example, the 911 dispatchers, commissionaires, or other staff members at police headquarters. And many of those interactions may not end with the individual actually interacting with a police officer. As a result, we're just noticing and we're recommending a review that they look at the roles of these people in the organization and recognize that they are a significant piece of the contact that the public has with their service. And this issue should be further examined as we move forward. In terms of perceptions of safety, there's 2 slides. There's slide 10 and slide 11. Fear of crime can be related to a whole host of factors other than crime itself, including witnessing rude or uncivil behavior, an individual's television viewing habits, for example, watching more hours of crime-related programs, and indicators of neighborhood disorders such as graffiti and garbage, etc. As a result, fear of crime can be unrelated to a person's actual risk of victimization or levels of crime in their community. An individual's notion about their personal safety may also be swayed by rare events, such as homicides, and there were numerous media reports focusing on gang-related shootings and homicides throughout Saskatchewan in 2018 and 2019. Although the average for this question in 2019, 3.26 out of 5, was marginally lower than reported in 2011, 2013, 2015, or 2017 community surveys, and showing a consistent decline over the past 3 cycles, the average for the previous 10 years was 3.34, showing that feelings of safety have been fairly consistent while recognizing a slight decline over the past few years, or the past few cycles, pardon me. Media coverage is on the rise with respect to gun-related crimes associated with methamphetamine in the city, as well as the perceptions that crime has consistently increased over the last 8 years, despite the evidence that overall and violent crime severity indexes have actually decreased for the most part from 2005 to 2017. So the media coverage, the concerns raised about methamphetamine, the concerns raised about gun-related crimes in the community could potentially explain the slight decreases in reported average safety over the last 3 cycles of the survey. We also looked at gender and age differences in the perceptions about personal safety, and female respondents, as is very consistent with the literature, reported feeling less safe walking alone after dark than their male counterparts. And a chi-squared analysis revealed that the differences were statistically significant. Of the 34 persons who reported that they did not walk alone after dark, the vast majority, or 85%, approximately 85%, were women. Contrary to what we've previously seen, less than 25% of these 32 respondents who did not walk alone after dark were 55 years of age or older. With respect to perception of social disorder in one's neighborhood, the Central District reported a statistically significant higher degree of concern about issues such as vandalism, graffiti, and damage than the other 2 patrol districts. The residents' perceptions regarding crime preventing one from doing things have been fairly consistent from 2011 through 2019. So if we move on to slide 11, with respect to the victimization component of the survey and the report, 173 or 38.4% of respondents reported being a victim of crime in the previous year. In the previous 2 years, sorry. Of those reporting being a victim of crime in the past 2 years, 46.8 of them did not report the crime to the police. Some of the reasons that they provided in the survey results was that they did not consider it important. It was of a minor value. However, 14.1 did say that they lacked confidence in a combination of the police or the criminal justice system as a whole in being able to respond and do something to address their concerns and their victimization. These findings are generally consistent with the results of national studies of crime victims carried out by Statistics Canada. For example, if you would like to see Perot 2015, that would be where we got the information. The overall average regarding the perceptions of service received by those who were victimized was slightly down in 2019, with a mean of 3.73 out of 5 when compared to 2013, 15, and 17, with respective means of 3.93, 3.87, and 3.74. However, inconsistent with national surveys, analysis of the victimization data suggests that being a crime victim in Regina does not reduce overall levels of trust and confidence in the police. This may indicate that the Regina Police Service provides more effective victim services than in other Canadian police jurisdictions. Turning now to perceptions of the quality of service. Almost 80% of respondents reported that the overall quality of service was 4.5 or 5, where 5 equals excellent, on the 5-point scale with a mean of 3.99. In the 2019 survey, 2.3% of respondents rated the overall quality of the Regina Police Service as poor. In the 2013 survey, 1.0, 2015, 1.6, and 2017, 2.1. When it comes to the demographic factors that were analyzed in conjunction with this information, there were no statistically significant differences reported with regard to any of the demographic variables. Overall satisfaction scores for those who reported having contact with the Regina Police Service was statistically significantly lower than those who did not have contact, a difference of 3.90 compared to 4.08. Those who reported that public disorder issues were not a problem at all, unsurprisingly reported statistically significantly higher overall satisfaction and quality of service than did those who reported social disorder and issues being a concern. Consistent with the results presented in the 2011, 13, 15, and 17 reports, there were no statistically significant differences in the perceptions when the results from the 3 patrol districts were compared. A review of the results from previous years showed that the ranking of responses from respondents in the Central District has been increasing over the past cycle of the survey. There's an open-ended question that is provided in the survey where respondents can indicate to the Regina Police Service areas that they could improve. The top 5 answers of this survey: more police visibility, presence, and more officers, more attention to high crime areas, a greater focus on gangs, drugs, and alcohol, the need to focus on property crimes and/or what some refer to as petty crimes, and better enforcement of laws, traffic violations, and check stops, with a number of them pointing directly to impaired driving and concerns that they had with that. Moving on to slide number 15. These are questions that are also consistent with the general social survey, and there are 7 questions about enforcing law, promptly responding to calls, etc., where the respondents have the opportunity to or the respondents are asked if they've done a poor job, average job, or good job. So it's responses to 7 questions: does the Regina Police Service do a good job of enforcing the laws, promptly responding to calls, being approachable and easy to talk to, supplying information to the public on ways to reduce crime, ensuring the safety of citizens in your area, treating people fairly, and cooperating with the public to address their concerns. When these values were summed for the 6 questions that had 5 observations, the average proportion of respondents who reported that the Regina Police Service did a poor job decreased from 8.8% per item in 2011 to 6.2% in 2019, representing close to a 30% reduction. There are some fairly minor fluctuations up and down across the 7 different questions when comparing the 2017 data to the 2019 data, and you can find those on page 45 of the report. Moving on to slide 16. We're now looking at the satisfaction with the Regina Police Service. The 2019 results of a mean of 4.0 out of 5 demonstrates a continued stable result over the 5 cycles of the survey. 4/5 of the respondents strongly agreed or somewhat agreed that there was sufficient information to deal with their situation. Almost 90% of respondents rated the handling of major events favorably, which is consistent with 2017. And no significant differences were noted between the patrol districts or any demographic variables on either the overall quality of service or the satisfaction with the Regina Police Service. So in brief, a summary of the 2019 community survey findings are that 4/5 of respondents somewhat or strongly agree that the Regina Police Service was an organization with integrity and honesty, and 78.3% of them somewhat or strongly agreed that the RPS demonstrates professionalism in their work. Over 3/4, close to 80%, 78.6%, of respondents somewhat or strongly agreed that the Regina Police Service is sensitive to the needs of their ethnic group. 79% of survey respondents ranked the overall quality of service provided by the Regina Police Service as very good to excellent. Over 3/4 of the respondents, 77.4% of respondents, reported being highly or very satisfied with the level of service provided by the Regina Police Service. Over 9 in 10 respondents somewhat or strongly agreed with having confidence in calling 911 in the case of an emergency. And finally, 71% of respondents agree or strongly agree that the Regina Police Service provides an adequate public safety information, and the proportion of respondents who reported accessing the RPS website, Facebook page, or Twitter feed has tripled since 2011. Those are the results of the survey, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jones. I do appreciate that, and I'm going to ask, before I ask members of the commission if they have any questions, Chief, do you have any other comments on this before we go to the commission?
Trent, Steve Lee.
Is now exiting.
So I'd ask members of the commission if you have any questions or comments, if you just put your name in the chat side, and then I'll recognize you. Anybody have any comments on the survey? Councillor Young. Councillor Young?
Thank you. I'm a little slow today. I would like to ask Dr. Jones about page 45 of the 49 pages, where it states that over 3/4 of respondents reported being highly or very satisfied with the level of service. No, I guess I picked the wrong page. You said on
Is now exiting.
You said on one of the pages that that people felt that they weren't getting service fast enough, and that seemed to go with the page saying that people are not seeing police often enough in their neighborhoods. Could you comment on that?
Dr. Jones?
Thank you for the question. I think you were looking at page 45 and looking at the comparisons over the years with respect to one of those 7 questions, which is promptly responding to calls. And what we've seen there is since 2011, where the percentage of people on that particular question has actually increased in terms of their agreeing that the percentage agreeing that the Regina Police Service has done a good job has gone from 54% in 2011 to 62.4% in 2019. And it's been a fairly steady increase from 2011 to 2013, and then consistent from 2015, 17, and 19. On the opposite end of the scale, those in 2011 who responded that RPS did a poor job in terms of responding to calls was at 13%. And now in 2019, we see that that's been reduced to 4.6% of them, suggesting that there's been a poor job done. There is a relationship between whether they perceive RPS being visible in their community and whether or not they respond promptly to a call. I think that's a fairly consistent finding. I think that's something that you would expect, that if one doesn't believe that they're seeing a visible presence in the neighborhood, it's not a stretch to think that they would not be able to promptly respond to a call if it were to occur in the neighborhood. But the support in terms of Regina, the police service doing a good job, has actually increased by 8% from 2011 to 2019 and decreased from 13 to 4.6 in 2019.
Sorry, Councillor, before you continue, we're getting some feedback. I think someone may have their microphone on. If you could just, everyone who's on the line, please check to make sure that you've muted your phone. Councillor Young, go ahead.
Okay, so my question now is about Indigenous respondents. Can you give an age breakdown of that?
No,
Dr.
that's
Jones?
not something I have in the report. That was something that I would have to get back to you on in terms of looking at that. That wasn't an analytical component that we have in the report. But as we have the data that is requested, we can certainly report back on that to see whether age was
Is now
if
joining.
we actually include an additional variable in the analysis to break it down, not
Is
just
now
by
joining.
Indigenous or non, but also by age. So if that's something that you're interested in, we can certainly report back to you on it, but that's not one of the analysis that we completed in this report.
Okay, I would like that age if you could get it back to the mayor's office. That would be helpful. And then my last question, Mr. Mayor, is that you mentioned civilian members and the importance of them, and there was a research report tabled at the Canadian Association of Police Governance research meeting, which I believe you were there as well, and it talks about the trauma experienced and the stress of civilian members is even higher in some cases than sworn members. Could you comment on that?
Dr. Jones?
Yeah, no, I became familiar with that report presented at the Canadian Association of Police Governance. I think that that's one of the things that when we, in my current role as well as Executive Director of the Canadian Institute for Public Safety Research and Treatment, and we're looking at the effects of, right now, the COVID-19, but also the regular interactions that public safety personnel have. Generally speaking, I think before this report, Barbara, there's been a real focus on the officers themselves and not so much focus on the civilian employees. And I think that report was very telling in terms of the stress and the reactions to the stress that the civilian personnel would also be feeling. I thought it was a very enlightening report. And I think based on that report, if you've had the opportunity to share it with Chief Bray, I think police officials across the country should be looking at that report and recognizing the importance of the civilian personnel in terms of their contact with the public, which is what we were talking about in this report. Often the first face you see is the commissioner at the front door or whoever may be answering the phone, and they're certainly an integral part of the public's interaction with the police. And I think a corollary to that, as you've noticed with this other report, is that they're also exposed to a variety of potentially trauma-inducing events or situations, or even just hearing stories that could be very difficult to process, and that's something that is certainly worth looking into in the future.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jones. One last thing. This perception report from the Regina Police Service research that you've done will be on the agenda for the Canadian Association of Police Governance Research Committee in August, and I hope you would be there to present this and speak to other professors and members of police commissions who may have questions about this that I would not be able to answer.
I will have to check my calendar. I'm sure Jennifer Malloy has sent me an invite.
I hope so.
I haven't looked that far ahead, Barbara. I'll have to be honest. I haven't looked that far ahead in my calendar to see where it's at. But if I'm there, if I'm able to attend, I will do so.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm finished.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Murray.
Thank you very much through the chair. Thank you, Dr. Jones. Sorry, is my camera on? I can just open it up full screen here.
You have a nice picture of you there, Councilor Murray.
Yeah, you can hear me though. My question for you, first off, I just want to appreciate the increase year to year on Indigenous representation. I know that's something that the board had talked about quite a bit in 2017, and it's great to see that increase. I'm wondering if you'd be able to provide us a slide or a page at some point on the sizes year to year and how much they vary, if it's been significant or not, and also just some feedback on getting enough respondents. Has that been a challenge?
Dr. Jones?
I missed one part of your question where you broke up, but I'll address the last part at the end. The challenge of getting the respondents really lies with the consulting firm that we hired to do that. And over the course of the 5 cycles, they haven't reported a challenge to us in that it's been difficult. Certainly we did change the requirements, so it changes how they have to do things in terms of ensuring that we have that proportional response from the Indigenous population in terms of their actual population in the city of Regina. They haven't reported any difficulty with it, whether that means that they've had to make additional calls or not. I would actually have to ask them whether that's been problematic, but they haven't reported any problems on that front. And the response, as you said, the board had talked about it, and we changed that in the methodology to ensure that proportionate response for 2017 and 2019. And the results of this year were Indigenous people were slightly overrepresented in the survey compared to their proportion in the actual population, which suggests to me that it probably wasn't a big challenge to access that population. And I'm sorry, you cut out and I didn't catch the first part of your question.
If you repeat that, Councilor.
No problem. For sure, that's great news. My question is just around sample sizes year to year. If we could just get a report or a slide to see what the exact sample sizes have been year to year.
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me, as we just have the current report. But it's all based at the end of the day. It's essentially based in terms of being consistent with the population of Regina and trying to ensure that we have the confidence intervals and a relatively low margin of error. So I think it's been fairly consistent between 4 something and 475. To be perfectly honest, I'm stretching on that. But on average, I think we're looking at around 450 is the target number. And then depending on how respondents are receiving it and answering, sometimes we have a few more, sometimes we have a few less. But 450 has been the general target area in terms of making sure that we're able to speak about a generalization to the city within certain parameters that are relevant to statistical methodology.
So that's great. Yeah, I'm not questioning the sample sizes at all. I was just wanting to know for reference if we can get more people engaged in the future. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Jones.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. Commissioner Pankratz, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to pass on my observations after listening to this report. This report. Since I've been a commissioner or a commissioner with the Board of Police Commissioners, this report demonstrates an almost unbelievable level of consistency with the high level of satisfaction that the Regina Police Service holds with the public here. And it just struck me as an interesting contrast with what you hear and see in the media these days and the reactions to events that occur elsewhere. And when you hear about that and you listen to this particular survey over the years, I just can't help but feel that it certainly adds a strong level of perspective to what is happening. And it tends to perhaps be a bit of a caution to not overreact to specific events, especially that do not happen in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pankratz. Other speakers or questions of the delegation?
If it's okay, Your Worship, could I just speak to his comment?
Yes, Dr. Jones, go right ahead.
I think one of the things that we've been very cognizant of is that we run the survey every year, or every 2 years at the same time of the year. We have purposefully done that because current research right now into perceptions of police, given the events of the past month, have shown a reduction in trust confidence of police in general. There's been one study that I'm aware of in Canada that has said that there seems to be a reduction, and certainly in the States that has happened. But one of the things that we've purposefully done is run it at the same time every 2 years, and that way we're not biasing when we run the survey, so that if one of these events were to happen, we would capture that. And I think that does speak to the consistency that you're seeing over time, because there was no way to predict when adverse media would come out in advance of when we collect this every year.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Jones. Good. Well, there's no more questions. Thank you very much for your presentation and answering questions, and I'd look for a motion to receive and file the report.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Marie. Comments or questions on the report itself?
That was Commissioner Yee.
Who's that? Jay? Oh, okay. If there's no other questions or comments, I just a very brief comment, and Commissioner Pancratz said a lot of what I wanted to say, that the report does show consistency over time, and this is a good news story. It also shows a lot of work goes into by the police service, women and men every day, to gain that trust of the public, and it also shows more work to be done too. No one's perfect. No police force is perfect. There's always work to be done to increase the public perception of how well we're doing, and each and every day the service does that. So pleased to see the results. I must say I'm surprised that it is that consistent over the number of years, but I think it's a testament to the great work being done by the RPS. If there are no other questions on this, I'm going to ask the clerk to do the roll call and the vote for the report. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Murray?
In favor.
Councillor Young?
In favor?
Commissioner Pancratz?
In favor.
Commissioner Yee?
In favor.
Mayor Fougere?
In favor.
And the motion passes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. So we're going to go to delegations now, and for the two motions that have been submitted by members of the commission. The first one is with respect to the Public Complaints
Is now
Commission.
joining.
And we have Michelle Stewart, who is the delegation. And I would just ask Ms. Stewart if you can hear me.
I can hear you, yes, this is Michelle Stewart.
Thank you very much. If you could just identify yourself, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, and members of the commission may have questions afterwards. So the floor is yours, and I'll give you notice of about a minute to go in your time.
Before my time starts, I'm sorry because I was clicking off between live and going on to the call. I'm just confirming that we're talking about the motion, Public Complaints Commission and Civilian Oversight.
That's the one, yes.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Dr. Michelle Stewart. I'll be speaking as a citizen of Regina. My comments are informed by the fact that I'm a researcher and professor at the University of Regina with subject matter expertise in policing and police practices. While Commissioner Yee is relatively new to the board, his motion reflects a critical issue that is regularly brought up at these meetings, specifically accountability and oversight, or here what I would say independent civilian oversight. And this has been raised by families impacted and individuals as well as community members. So thank you for bringing this matter forward. Frequently, I've stood up and spoke at these meetings and have had either been told that accountability comes from the Public Complaints Commission or that we can't quite speak to that in these spaces. So I appreciate that this motion better reflects the mandate of the board, as I understand it and stated on the RPS page. And I'll quote here, that quote, the Board of Police Commissioners is the governing body of the Regina Police Service and the vital link between the community and its police. Page also states that, quote, the board establishes the objectives and priorities of the Regina Police Service. The board also approves the budget, end quote. With that in mind, I'm formally proposing the following actions for the Board of Police Commissioners to undertake the following. Start a public consultation focused on the police budget. The budget speaks to the priorities. Regina residents are raising concerns about spending right now, and the Board of Police Commissioners is responsible to understand those concerns as it reflects the question around priorities and objectives. As the budget goes to the Council each year in December, I'm asking that the Board of Police Commissioners take leadership role right now in receiving comments from the public to clearly understand what the public is seeking as its priorities, and then those can be operationalized through budget line approvals at the end of the year. Specifically, I ask that these become a standing item each month at the Board of Police Commissioners' agenda, which would allow for a focus on current priorities and objectives, and that the board would then report what the public has said as it relates to spending, what should and should not be allocated, and how those dollars should be spent. I'm formally asking that the Board of Police Commissioners be accountable to their constituents and place on the agenda each month a standing item called Objectives and Priorities. This issue is being raised in the city with well over 3,000 people signing a petition to defund police, and that call is about priorities and objectives. I want the Board of Police Commissioners to be thinking about these issues actively leading up to the budget proposals of 2020-2021, and for the public to have a tangible outlet to share what they prioritize in police spending and practices and what they do not. Now, going back to Commissioner Yee's motion on the question of accountability, in here, changing the Public Complaints Commission is going to be long work. And I appreciate that the board is asking for the Public Complaints Commission to continue with its further reform, and Minister Morgan has indicated he's likely to do that. But from my perspective, it is not independent civilian oversight. So while this motion does put pressure from the Board of Police Commissioners to the Public Complaints Commission, and that is an important step forward for the board, the public has waited long enough. I'm here to say that the community will be striking an independent civilian review board. We will bring those details to the Board of Police Commissioners at the next meeting and outline how this truly independent review board can work collaboratively with the Board of Police Commissioners and with the Public Complaints Commission. At this time in Saskatchewan, there is not truly independent review, and people have waited too long. In the absence of accountability, there is impunity as flawed investigations continue. The time has come for change, and it is long overdue. People are tired of asking for change and will bring about that change in the community themselves. In the name of Haven, Nadine, and countless others that are asking for change, I am asking that the Police Review Board start to put civilian oversight as a standing item at each Board of Police Commissioners meeting. So in closing, I'm asking that there's a standing item on objectives and priorities each month.
You have 1 minute left in your presentation time.
Thank you. So I'll reiterate. I'm asking a standing item on objectives and priorities each month, and I'm asking that the Board of Police Commissioners put civilian oversight on the next agenda and that there's presentation time made available by community members so that the Board of Police Commissioners can understand this new civilian oversight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stewart, for your presentation, and I'll see if there's questions from members of the Commission. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll take those notes under advisement and see how we can work those things through. So thank you so much. You can stand down, and I'll now ask Commissioner Yee to introduce the motion that he put forward. Commissioner Yee.
Great. Thank you very much there, Your Worship. First and foremost, I just want to thank Dr. Michelle Stewart for speaking previously. So with what the civilian oversight, it's my honor and privilege to have the opportunity to introduce this motion. This comes as a result of our community's actions in recent weeks, rallying and making its voice heard. The events of the last several weeks have amplified voices we have heard before, both from the Indigenous and Black community in Regina. And it's what Dr. Michelle Stewart said, that we waited too long. So the board and I created this motion to respond to the concerns raised by the residents of Regina. There is a movement in many other provinces to do what people here in our city have asked.
Is now exiting.
Transition our police oversight agencies into civilian-led bodies. Many people, but especially Indigenous, Black, and other racialized people, have a lack of confidence in the process that see police officers investigating police officers. Even the Saskatchewan Association of Chiefs of Police recognized the need for greater transparency and independence to improve that confidence. It is the board's desire to give civilians a balance of seats on the Public Complaints Commission and to encourage the provincial government to create an independent incident response team that would look specifically at the use of force incidents. It is also vitally important that these bodies have enough support from the province to carry out timely and effective investigations. So for these reasons, I'm pleased to introduce the following motion. Whereas some residents of Regina, in particular Black, Indigenous, and racialized people, have expressed a lack of confidence in the current system dealing with complaints against police officers in the course of police investigations and actions. Whereas residents of Regina have expressed a desire to ensure that civilian oversight take the place of police investigating police. Whereas the Saskatchewan Association of Chiefs of Police has acknowledged that providing more transparent, independent, civilian-led oversight is vital to improving the public's confidence in police services. Whereas the provincial government's proposed amendment to the Police Act 1990, the Police Amendment Act 2020, expands the role of the Public Complaints Commission, but does not make a fundamental shift away from having members of other police services investigating police services when complaints are made. Whereas 7 other provinces have replaced the practice of having police officers investigating complaints against other police officers with independent, serious incident response teams. Therefore, be it resolved that the Regina Board of Police Commissioners request the Minister of Justice, Attorney General, and the Government of Saskatchewan to commit to further reform of the PCC by transitioning to civilian-only oversight, expanding the membership of the PCC to ensure adequate, timely, and thorough investigations, and providing the expanded PCC with adequate resources and investigative tools. The Regina Board of Police Commissioners request the Minister of Justice, Attorney General, to expedite the creation of a civilian-only independent serious incident response team to deal with incidents involving injury or death sustained by members of the public who are placed in police custody or subject to police investigations. The Board of Police Commissioners provide a report to City Council and members of the public regarding Regina Police Services use of force guidelines and the concept of use of force as described and defined by the Saskatchewan Police Commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Yee. Could I have a seconder for that motion, please? Anybody want to speak to it? Just
Yes.
place your name in the chat. Okay, Councillor Young, you're first.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jada. In thinking over this motion and preparing for this meeting, this is really a bleak time around North America and the world. We're seeing a full view of what police brutality looks like in the U.S. and some in Canada. But it gives us an opportunity to look in depth at police services because we have people's attention. And I think that might make some things happen sooner rather than later. So the Commission's going to be looking at current practices over a period of time, but today the 2 motions on the floor is a first step. And the first motion, Commissioner Yee's motion, talks about creating a civilian independent serious response team to deal with incidents and also to reform civilian oversight. And the third is to bring a report to council, City Council, where it would be much more public because more people listen and attend than they do to Board of Police Commission meetings. The Commission has use of force on its agenda each year, and it's here now. But we need the background to that use of force, the policies and the training requirements from the Police Act, the Saskatchewan Police Commission, and the Regina Police Service. So being well informed is the first step to making changes. It's important to know that the Regina Police Service and the Saskatchewan Chiefs of Police have been asking for this oversight and investigation assistance for some time, and it's welcomed. So requiring police to take on oversight as well as their roles to serve and protect doesn't make sense. So let's not miss this opportunity to make a difference. I do have a friendly amendment that I'd like to put forward to Commissioner Yee, and that would be on the last part of the motion to add the Police Act to that list of, see if I can get the right
Is
one
this
here.
this the resolution
Yeah.
number 3?
Number 3 that we have where we ask to a report to City Council regarding police service use of force guidelines and concept for use of force as described and defined by the Saskatchewan Police Commission. But I'd like that to also include the Police Act.
Commissioner Yee, are you okay with doing that? Commissioner Yee, are you okay with adding that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, I'll take that as a
I am
friendly
okay
amendment.
with that amendment.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Are you finished?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Councillor Murray.
Thank you, through the chair. Just some clarity on that friendly amendment. Is that to provide council with the Police Act of 1991, or is that to ask the provincial government to review the Police Act?
Councillor Young?
I think what I have in mind, and this may not be the right place for it, is that when we look at these issues with the Saskatchewan Police Commission, I think we always need to look at the Police Act. So at some point, we need to look at the Act as well. What is the Act directing the Saskatchewan Police Commission to do? And so that we have all of the levels there. We have the Police Act, we have the Saskatchewan Police Commission, which must make some interpretations from the Police Act, and then we also have our own policies to look at.
Yeah, that makes sense for some research. Councillor Murray?
Yeah, definitely. To expand on that, I think when you look at the changes of policing since 1991 to 2020, there are very significant changes. So take a look at that act and opening it up publicly so people know what's in it, I think is important. So I appreciate that. Also, in absolute support of Commissioner Yee's motion, I think this puts some pressure on the provincial government at this time when the public is watching, and the public is asking for this and has been asking for this for a long time. We're one of a handful of provinces left that do not have a fully civilian oversight commission that's been created. So I think when you have chiefs of police asking for an end of police investigating police, that says a lot. So I'm very much in support of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Commissioner Pancratz, do you wish to speak?
I support the motion, but I don't have any comments to add at this time.
Okay. Well, I have just a few, and Commissioner Yee, thank you very much for the resolution and the motion. I appreciate it very much. It is an emphatic statement of both the police service and the Board of Police of taking steps to get ahead of some issues that are facing certainly the United States, around the world, and certainly other parts of Canada. It is a very clear statement, and I can say that I've had conversations with the Minister of Justice and Attorney General about the recent amendments that they have made, and I said that they, with respect, don't go far enough. It's critical that we do have two factors: civilian oversight and police not investigating police. To me, that is fundamental to continue to provide confidence in the public that these issues will be dealt with swiftly and objectively. So I support that, and I support the issue of more resources for the PCC as well. That is outside of the critical incident response team we're looking at, just more resources for the commission to do its work in a more balanced way. But again, I think we're stepping ahead of what's happening around the world now, and it's an emphatic statement of this commission and of the police service that civilian oversight is the way to go, and having police not investigate police is also where we should be leading to. And we are, as you said, Councilor Marie, one of the few provinces that do not have this in place. I absolutely support the police service, what they're doing each and every day, and the survey that we just talked about shows the level of public confidence, which I think is remarkable. Not perfect, but remarkable, and shows a lot of issues that are being addressed by our service each and every day. The next motion we're going to talk about will get into another element of what needs to be done. But with respect to this motion, I'm fully supportive of this one, and I'm certain that we'll have support by the rest of the commission. Before I call for the vote, though, I'm going to ask the chief if he has any comments on the motion. Chief Bray?
Thank you, Your Worship. I will keep my comments short. The comment has been said. Councillor Joel Murray mentioned that the Saskatchewan Association of Chiefs of Police have been very supportive of enhanced civilian oversight. We're very aware of what exists in other provinces, and so it is our hope that that the step that has been taken by the provincial government, which is a positive one, is truly phase one. We're hearing that this is a multi-phased approach and eventually get to the point that we have models that are very similar to those throughout Canada. I think you often have heard me talk about the need for us to have the trust of the public in order for us to do our job is extremely high. And so having the trust of the public comes through our actions and our relationships that we build in the community, but it also comes with understanding that there is structure in place if there's concern about misconduct, that it will be investigated fairly, transparently, and that's what this process does. So I'm appreciative of our Board of Police Commissioners taking this positive step forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any other comments before I ask for the vote? To the clerk, please, to do the vote, please.
Councillor Young?
In support.
Commissioner Yee?
In support.
Commissioner Pankratz?
In support.
Councillor Murray?
In support.
Mayor Fougere?
I vote yes.
Motion passes.
Unanimous support. Thank you very much, everyone. So we'll go on to our next motion, and this is related to the community policing and community safety and well-being. Again, I believe Dr. Stewart is on the line, and she can make her presentation if he's there. Dr. Stewart, are you there? Okay. Dr. Stewart, if you hit *6, you can unmute your phone. Dr. Stewart?
I believe she exited earlier.
She's back, I believe, now, though. Dr. Stewart, if you unmute your phone hitting *6. Yeah, you can't unmute her from here. Okay, well, we'll move on to a different report then while we're trying to reconnect with Dr. Stewart. And I would look at go to the top of the agenda for everyone. This is report 20-11, the monthly crime stats.
Is now exiting.
Chief, I'll give you the floor for the first report.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. So with regard to monthly crime stats, these are the crime stats that will be up to and including the end of May 2020. We have seen an overall decrease in our crime stats this year. I think there's multiple factors for that, but not the least of which likely is just the significant change in public behavior due to COVID. We have seen some different nuances with regard to our crime stats in that regard as well. But as always, I'll break it down: crimes against property and then crimes against the person. Crimes against our property category is where we see the largest decrease. Currently, we're sitting at 27.3% decrease overall, which is probably most predominantly recognized in a couple of ways. Theft under $5,000, which would include shoplifting, is down nearly 31%. 31%. Mischief, willful damage is down 22.3%. And I think most significantly, our theft of auto rates are down 45.5%, which is a huge swing when you consider at this time last year we were up nearly 50% from the year before. So that's really positive, obviously, to see those decreases in numbers. Crimes against the person, we are seeing a decrease as well. It's not quite as significant as the property crimes, but we're at a 7.3% decrease. So overall, when you combine the categories, 23.9% decrease. I'll just highlight a couple of things in terms of increases. Our homicides are unfortunately higher this year than they were last. We've had 7 homicides to date in 2020. As you remember, in January, we had unfortunate number of events that happened that led to homicides. We have also seen some increases with regard to arson. We've seen increases with regard to business break-and-enters. So those are some of the trends that we've been tracking. As far as decreases, our attempt murders are down from what they were last year by 55%. Our sexual assaults are down 31%. Our theft of motor vehicle I've mentioned, and our theft in general, and including mischief, is down as well. I did add some other stats. So I think this is important for us when we're talking about policing and what our police officers do, and we're talking about crime stats. We often talk about homicides and robberies, attempt murders, and theft of autos. But I want to give you some other stats that are the reality for police officers in Regina. On average, we are attending 19 domestic-related calls for service a day. That's up from 15 where we were last year. We have attended year-to-date 662 suicide calls. So that's nearly 4 suicide calls or attempt suicide calls a day. Sadly, 20 of those calls that we've attended to have been completed suicides. So that's a large number of people in our community that are suffering in some form. Often it's through mental illness and are needing help. Overdoses right now reported to police and health authority is 432, 33 deaths. 35 times our police officers have administered Narcan. So along with the hard stats that we typically give you around thefts and assaults, I felt like it was important for you to get a full picture, including some of the other more social calls that we go to on a daily, monthly, and weekly basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, for that. Thank you for the additional stats as well. Members of the Commission, do you have any comments? Any questions?
Vic here. I have a question. I'm looking, Chief, at the sexual crimes other and the significant increase in that. And I'm wondering what specific offenses meant by that. And then I have a follow-up question.
Sure. Thank you. Through your worship, the sexual crime other category basically deals with the sexual crimes that don't constitute a sexual assault. So things like sexual interference, invitation to sexual touching, sexual exploitation, corrupting morals of a child. There's a few that fall into that category. A lot of the times those are the work that is done by our ICE, Integrated Child Exploitation Unit, our Family Services Unit, and sometimes our VICE unit. What I can tell you is that we have actually had 15 reported voyeurism calls for service year to date as compared to 0 in 2019. And so when you think about that, and the voyeurism, for example, it's an incident where there was 1 suspect but 9 different victims. So those types of swings in reporting, especially when we're not dealing with large numbers, can show a large percentage increase. Not to downplay the fact, I mean, these are significantly traumatizing events. Year to date in 2019, we had 18 in the sexual crime other. This year we're at 39. So voyeurism is a big part of that. And our sexual interference, which I mentioned is largely investigated by our Family Services section, we've had 14 in that category year to date as opposed to 7 that we'd investigated last year. So that's where the swing comes in that number.
Commissioner Pankratz, you have more questions?
Yes, thank you for that. And I was also looking at the increase in the stalking area and the level 3 assaults. And the question came to mind that are these would these stats represent separate incidents, or could one incident represent a stat in each of those categories?
Chief?
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, these would be incidents reported to our police service. But there is the possibility, and I mentioned the voyeurism file before, where you've got one person charged, but 9 victims happened at potentially different locations. So yeah, these are individual incidents that are reported to us. I can't remember the first part of your question, Commissioner Pankratz. It was about stalking.
I was wondering if one incident could result, for example, a stat for stalking coupled with, say, a level 3 assault or other sexual crimes. So I think those would be 3 separate incidents as opposed to one incident resulting in each one of those.
Right. Sorry. Yeah. Yes, you're right. So if we have one incident where there's 3 different offenses that take place, each offense would be recorded. So it is possible that we respond to one incident and there's more than one offense that's recorded at that time. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councillor Young, do you have your name on the list?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go right ahead.
Is it not there? I thought it was
It
there.
is, but it's a few minutes ago.
Okay, okay. Okay. Chief Bray, could you have some comments about why some things have decreased this year? What has changed to make that happen?
Chief?
Thank you for the question. Very tough one to answer. There's a lot of different factors that play into that. We see sometimes, COVID, for example, I think is an easy one to point to. You've heard me use this example before. We saw proportionate changes in break and enters to homes go down and break and enters to business go up. And we had individuals that were working out of their homes, staying home more, and businesses that were vacant for longer periods of time. And I think that records that. We actually saw an interesting, significant increase in calls like suspicious persons, we feel, due to the fact that people were at home. And the interactions that were happening daily in communities and back alleys and front yards were just going unobserved with people being at work. But when people are at home, they're seeing what's happening and they're calling it in. No different than, for example, traffic complaints. Our traffic complaints, as things reopen and citizens are back on the streets in larger numbers, we're seeing a lot of traffic complaints coming in, people concerned about speeding, even the noise of vehicles and those types of things. So fluctuations, I think COVID has played a role in that as well. In some areas, we've seen increases, for example, in controlled drugs and substances. We have done a lot of work over the first 6 months of this year in terms of drug enforcement with regard to trafficking and people that are importing or bringing drugs into our community. We've had some great success in large seizures there, and that would show the increase or the fluctuation up with regard to those numbers. Shoplifting, I think, is another example. It's down because businesses are closed, and so the ability for shoplifting to occur, the opportunity is not quite there, and we often know that crimes, especially property crimes, are crimes of opportunity, and so I think a lot of the time it's got to do with take away that opportunity and the crime doesn't happen.
Councillor Young?
Okay, thank you. So one takeaway from this might be that neighbors and neighborhoods play a real role in safety and lowering crime by being aware and calling in and working as a neighborhood.
Yes, I appreciate that. I think that's a very positive comment. And to that comment, Deputy Chief Ray just mentioned to me as well, I think one significant point too that I would be remiss if I didn't mention is we have redeployed a lot of resources over the last 4 months, given the fact that our school resource officers can't be in schools, our community engagement unit, our cultural unit haven't been able to do those pieces of work. We've had officers that normally work at the police college, all of which were deployed back to the front line. And so we we've seen significant increases in some cases, in some nights, 30 or 40% higher than what they normally are. And so that extra visibility, that extra coverage in the city has allowed us to swiftly respond to calls. We've been able to catch, for example, an alarm call would come in more than one instance, we've caught people inside the business doing the break and enter, and just having those extra resources out there have been quite instrumental in that and helpful as well.
And one last question. The perception survey talked about people wanting more visibility of the police, and it sounds to me like having more people in cars and on the street has raised that visibility in neighborhoods, and it has allowed you to do more work in neighborhoods than you might have done.
Yeah, it's definitely allowed us to allow our officers to be quicker on responding to calls, have more time to do investigations, and I think alternatively give our officers the opportunity to just be proactively present in the different areas that they're assigned to. When I speak with members of City Council, often that's the type of conversation that we have, is just the need for police visibility in all the different areas of the city. People like to see police in their neighborhood. It speaks directly to their perception of safety, which we heard in the perception of, or the perceptions report that we just had at this meeting. So it has been a positive thing for us for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Any other questions or comments on the report? Could I have a motion to receive and file, please?
I would move.
Thank you. I'll make that.
File.
Thank you, Councillor Young. I'll ask for a vote on this for the clerk.
Commissioner Pankratz,
In favor?
Commissioner Yee,
In favor.
Councillor Young,
In favor?
Councillor Murray,
In favor.
Mayor Fougere.
I vote yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Is Dr. Stewart on the line? She's still not on the line, eh? Okay. We're still waiting for Dr. Stewart to jump in. So we'll go to the report 20-12 use of force, year-end 2019. Chief, do you want to take us through that, please?
Sure. So I'm going to be introducing Inspector Tim Seiferling in just a moment. Tim Seiferling is the officer that's in charge, or the chair of our use of force committee. This is an annual report that we provide. This normally would have been provided again in the spring, but because we haven't had public meetings up until today, that's why it's coming forward today. So if Inspector Tim Seiferling is on the line, I'd like him to walk us through this report, please.
Inspector Seiferling, are you there?
I am there. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Good afternoon, Board, Your Worship. I'd like to go over this report. It will provide information on situations where force was required by members of the Regina Police Service for the reporting period of January the 1st to December 31st, 2019. In 2019, the reported uses of force in total were lower than in 2018 by 8.91%. We had 276 reported incidents of use of forces in 2019 as compared to 303 in 2018. If you look at page 3, there's a national use of force framework. I spoke about that last year. That national use of force framework was developed in 1999 and 2000 by a group of 64 of Canada's top use of force educators in partnership with the Canadian Police College and Ontario Police College. All municipal police agencies in the province of Saskatchewan follow the National Use of Force Framework. The Saskatchewan Police Commission guides use of force training, recertification equipment for the municipal agencies. An example of how this comes into play for us at the Regina Police Service, police officers are introduced to this framework as recruits at the Saskatchewan Police College through lectures and practical exercises. The Saskatchewan Police College Recruit Training Course is a 20-week course for recruits for training in the use of defensive control tactics, which is about 80 hours, firearms, CEW training, baton, rapid deployment, post training, and de-escalation techniques. And after graduation, when the officers come back to their municipal agencies, for example, they came back to us, we then are responsible for everything the members are on the various sides of use of force options and de-escalation training. The use of force board is comprised of 7 members of the Regina Police Service and 1 member of the Regina Police Association who's an observer. We are mandated to review all reported incidents where members of the Regina Police Service used force. The committee includes a constable, a sergeant, and 2 staff sergeants from our Community Services Division, which is our uniform division, a sergeant from the Support Services Division, and a staff sergeant from the Investigative Support Division. The use of force board members all have a level of expertise in a variety of these use of force option fields, and the board meets on a monthly basis and the conclusion of each session to talk about the level where these uses of force are and provide critique. The committee classifies each use of force into 1 of 3 categories. In 2019, as I said before, our numbers had gone down overall, but if you look on page 5, there's a list of our 5-year comparison. 8 of the 23 categories showed a slight increase, and 15 of the 23 categories, showing a slight decrease. If we look at, for example, the 3rd category down, hard physical control, which was strikes, we had, on a 5-year average, we were sitting at 51.8 on average. Last year, we increased to 61, which is just less than 1 a month, I guess, if you look at it that way. Compared to 2018, it was an April 11 overall increase on that. And some other areas for increase, like if you look down at the other, we had an increase in that section of 4. But an example of an other increase in that would be if we had somebody, for example, in one of the cases, somebody was being escorted out of the back of one of our police cars and actually lost their balance and fell. So we actually reviewed that to make sure that there was nothing, there was no other force used on that, and it was actually an accident. So when you look at that, that's the type of increase that we might have in that. Our decreases, like I said, there was 15 of the 23 categories that we were either equal or less increases on that. For us internally here, we work on tactical communication or de-escalation training in our annual defensive tactics and CEW recertification sessions. We really work hard at that and doing that within our scenarios, and you really see that, especially in our CEW scenario training. And further, all Regina Police recruits in training at the Saskatchewan Police College are provided tactical communication course prior to graduation. And that would be the end of the report if there's any questions.
Good, thank you very much for your presentation, and I'd ask members of the commission if they have questions. I have a couple of questions. If members of the commission are still thinking about this. One, it would be the use of force, of course, is actually mandated through the Saskatchewan Police Commission. How does is there an annual review by the commission, or do they ask for input by police services as to a change in the use of force? Chief?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. We do have we give an annual report to the Saskatchewan Police Commission. They often will listen and take constructive advice from, for example, the Public Complaints Commission. If they feel that they're seeing a trend or something that is concerning to them, they will bring it up, and the Saskatchewan Police Commission will address it if they feel it's something that it needs to be addressed through use of force. The Saskatchewan Police Commission did an audit about 2 years ago on use of force in the province, and it was really focused on trying to ensure that there was some uniformity in how use of force was being reported. There is obviously, like I said, yearly reporting that's done to the Saskatchewan Police Commission, but the nuances of how it is adjudicated on back at the individual services. What does the review process look like? What's the makeup? Are there proper notes and minutes being taken? What's the communication like with the members? Some of those more policy-driven things were looked at, and in many ways, they used the Regina use of force model as the template for the rest of the province. There was very few changes that they suggested we make, but it was more they used the model that we have here as a good template and something that was put into place in other municipalities in the province. So there is, I would say, yearly communication and interaction with the Saskatchewan Police Commission. They're willing to make adjustments if they feel there's a need for it. Sometimes it's just better education and training on an issue. De-escalation training, Inspector Seiferling talked about that. That's been an important part of what we have brought into our training. So we do in all of the scenario-based training that we do at the police college and throughout a police officer's career, de-escalation training is built into that. And so that's a good example of a discussion we've had with the Provincial Commission.
Well, you anticipated my second question, which was the training to de-escalate is as important as the use of force.
Yeah, it very much is. You're right.
When you evaluate a circumstance that an officer is facing at the time, it's a pretty quick decision as to whether to apply a use of force or to de-escalate. I just wonder if you have any comment on that narrative.
Sure, and you're exactly right. When you look at the national use of force model that Inspector Seiferling talked about, it's very much a fluid. That's why it's in a circle, and if the situation can be handled through, even just time and distance between the individual, trying to de-escalate it verbally, talking to the person, using patience, trying to find other alternative ways to resolve a situation in a peaceful manner, that is all part of it. And so as you move through that use of force continuum, you have to understand that if you do need to move up on the use of force model, the ability to move back again has to happen as swiftly as moving up. So once the situation is under control, you always have to move back to that compliance. So that's an important part of the training. It is, like I said, we're rolling out block training, for example, for our police officers again this year. A lot of it has to do with operational training where we've got them in a situation or a scenario, and de-escalation techniques and other forms of handling a situation to avoid a use of force is very much part of the curriculum and training.
Last question for me is how often is there training on use of force and de-escalation?
Every year. Every year, police officers get that. Some years it might be more than others, depending on, there's, for example, we do self-defense training every year. We do firearm recertification every year. And so part of that training is de-escalation. This year, we added a few other different types of operational training scenarios, and each one of those had de-escalation built into it as well.
Thank you for that. I think Councillor Young, you have some questions or comments.
Yes, thank you. Chief Bray, I'm looking at the stats for the number of people that end up in detention, and I'm wondering if you would have any comments about, are some of those people, would they be better served if they could be taken to some kind of an addictions area or mental health services?
Chief?
Yes.
Do you have any idea of a percent just off the top?
I don't. I don't have an idea of percentage, but I can tell you that there's a large number of people who are arrested by police or even taken into custody because they were talking about wanting to harm themselves, commit suicide. You just heard me talk about some attempt suicide stats that we've had this year. If we take those individuals to the hospital and they're combative, if they're intoxicated, oftentimes the hospital wants to see them when they're sober. And so it's either they remain at the hospital with police officers staying with them to try and keep everyone safe, or they're lodged in cells if brief detox unit, for example, is not available. So I do think that there are a lot of times that people are being taken into police custody because they need help, but there's nothing else open to help them, and so we end up as a bit of a last resort.
Okay, thank you. And a second question is, you have two, I believe, mental health workers that can be called out to events or to speak with people who are in that kind of a category. Could you speak about that?
Chief?
Sure, yeah. So you're talking about our PAC team, which stands for Police in Crisis. We do have a team that works every day. We've got someone working in our PAC team unit. They don't work 24 hours a day, but they do work every day. They work a segment of time every day. And it is a partnership of police with mental health workers. And really, I think the benefit of that team is to try and better help people that are in true mental crisis when the justice system isn't what they need for help. However, they might escalate to the point that they put themselves in harm's way or others in harm's way just because of the lack of care that they're being given for their mental illness. And so a lot of the work that's done, sometimes it is in response to a crisis in the community. We will respond to the crisis, and then our PAC team will take over and provide that more meaningful long-term wraparound care, connect them with other services and supports that they need. But in some cases, it's proactively reaching out to people who typically would be calling our police service almost on a daily basis. They do a lot of proactive work to try and help those people, again, connect to the service and the supports that they need, when really it's not police that are best suited to help them, but we often are the ones that are called upon.
And do you have the PACT team 24 hours? Did I hear you?
No, they're not. We work 12-hour shifts and 7 days a week, but they work different shifts, so it's not always during the day. They'll work an afternoon or after midnight, but we don't have them right now staffed 24/7. I think that would be great, but again, it comes down to staffing numbers and priorities, and right now we've got an agreement with the Saskatchewan Health Authority that they have given us 2 members that have the mental health training, and we've put 2 police officers in there, but we do keep it staffed on a daily basis.
And if you had more of those workers, you could do it 24 hours a day, correct?
That's correct.
And can you tell me about social services? One of the things that I received in the mail was the question about should you have social service people also working in conjunction with something like a PAC team? What would you say to that?
Chief?
Well, we do have integration with social services. Our family service section, which deals often with crimes involving children, works very collaboratively. In fact, it's one of the first collaborations with social services in Canada. It's been 24, 25 years that we've had this family service section up and running. The results are outstanding, but oftentimes we're seeing the frustrations and challenges with social service has to do with caseload. So you've got one worker who's got a very large caseload, and it's not always about the interaction when the crisis happens or when police have to step in for intervention, but it's about that care and long-term sustainable support going forward to prevent future interactions with the police that can become challenging.
Thank you.
Councillor
I'm
Young.
finished.
Thank you very much.
Worship.
We also, I just got a note here, Deputy Chief Ray reminded me, we also have access with Mobile Family Services, Mobile Crisis, they do work 24/7, and they are an incredible resource for us and help us 3 in the morning if we need someone to come and help with placement of children or something like that. They're very helpful.
Perfect. Thanks, Chief, for that. Any other questions or comments on the report? I have a motion to receive and file, please.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Yee. I'll have the clerk take the vote, please.
Commissioner Yee,
Yes.
Commissioner Pankratz,
Yes.
Councillor Young,
Yes.
Councillor Murray,
In favor?
Mayor Fougere.
Vote yes. Thank you very
Motion
much.
passed.
So we'll just go back to motion 15. Is Dr. Stewart there? Dr. Stewart?
Hi, can folks hear me?
How are you? Thanks for waiting.
I'm good.
So,
Thanks for having me.
So we're on motion 15. This is a community policing and community safety and well-being. And as before, you have 5 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions afterwards. So the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. All right. So thank you, Commissioner Young and Murray, for bringing this item forward. Again, my name is Dr. Michelle Stewart. I'm speaking as a citizen, but also subject matter expert on policing. I believe that this motion mirrors motions that have been proposed in Saskatoon, and so I just wanted to raise a couple of kind of questions and concerns. So the first comes from the preamble, in which it says, quote, whereas Regina residents have made it clear that a greater investment should be made in health, mental health, community supports, and rehabilitation through the justice system, end quote. I'm not sure that Regina residents have said that they want greater investments in this area through the justice system. I would agree that that might be where we find ourselves today. But this is the result of defunding of other sectors. It has found much of the work now falling into police services. But I don't think residents would necessarily say they want to invest in justice to address these other social and community issues. Rather, investing in appropriate support such as health, mental health, addictions, and community support. These are social determinants of health issues and we should not be seeking to police our way through these issues. Policing results in a criminalization of those with mental health and addictions, and that should not be what we're seeking. I would also direct our collective attention to the recent announcement from Canada's largest mental health centre, that is the Centre for Addictions and Mental Health in Toronto, who released a statement this past week, and I quote parts of. It says, quote, recent events have exposed the tragic outcomes that can occur when people with mental illness experience a crisis in the community and are not able to get the care they need. Racism and anti-Black racism compound these crisis interactions. CAMH, along with other mental health partners, have been advocating for years for measures to improve crisis care. It's clear we need a new way forward. And they conclude by saying, quote, for a long time, the healthcare system has relied on police to respond to mental health crises in the community. Transformative change is needed to support a new way forward. People with mental illness and their families deserve better, end quote. I'm here to amplify that call for us to do better by families and raise specific questions now to Regina Police Service. And I caution the member of the Commission who earlier said that these types of issues don't happen in Regina. So I'm going to be speaking about the PAC team. I would like to specifically ask Chief Bray if Constable Powers is still on the PAC team. I will remind the Commissioner that Constable Powers was caught on surveillance camera assaulting an Indigenous man outside a downtown facility in May 2012. It's my understanding that Constable Powers then lied about that encounter, and he lied for 9 additional days at different points of the investigation into the use of force. Constable Powers was charged in December 2012 and relieved of duty in March 2013 under then Chief Troy Hagan, who noted Mr. Powers was dishonest and only came clean when he knew there was surveillance footage. Mr. Powers was later convicted. That was appealed, and the final outcome, I believe, is that his assault, which was a drop kick, was upheld and appealed, and he has since held his job. He assaulted a vulnerable person in our community. Chief Bray, does this officer still work on the PAC group? Or this is the the PAC team. I ask because I hope he is not, and I also ask whether or not he is on the PAC team. He is still employed by RPS, and that is concerning. I would ask the Commissioners request from RPS a list of all officers who are convicted of a criminal code offense and who are still working with the public. As you note in your motion, the police are called in to work with vulnerable people. To reiterate, I am asking Chief Bray if Constable Powers works with PAC, and I am also asking the Board of Commissioners to order a report from RPS on the number of officers convicted of criminal code offenses, including assault. Can Commissioner Young and Murray also speak to this final item? I'm wrapping up my comments now. Commissioner Young and Murray, can you indicate in your advocacy to the province for more funding, are you seeking more funding for agencies that deliver supports and services, or more funding for those supports to be delivered through the justice system as indicated in the preamble? I thank you both for your particular motion and for raising concerns about the complex needs that residents have and how these needs are not and should not be delivered by police. My comments are
Dr. Stewart, you about a minute to go in your presentation time.
Thank you. My comments are meant to outline that these supports and services are not best delivered by police, but rather, as is argued by our colleagues at the Centre for Addictions and Mental Health, noting that these are mental health concerns and health concerns, and they're not addressed best by police officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'll see if there's any questions from members of the Commission. Councillor Murray.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the chair. Thanks, Dr. Stewart, for your presentation. First, I'd like to say that I don't believe that the police are set up to deliver these services. I think that It may not be perfectly clear in that motion, so maybe we need to wordsmith that last section around through the justice system. So I want to make that clear. And I'll ask some other questions to Chief Bray after your presentation. So thank you for that.
Remember, you have to keep these, lastly, members keep these two questions to the delegation. Councillor Young?
I was going to say the same thing that Councillor Murray said to Dr. Stewart's question. And the other thing that that I have heard from the community that I speak to is that the justice system does not rehabilitate. So those people that are in the justice system and find themselves back in the community without the supports they need, and their families also need support. And so we can't forget that it certainly shouldn't just be incarceration. That there's a whole string of things that need to happen to help those people go back into society and be successful.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Again, if we should stick firstly to questions to the delegation, if you have them. Anyone else? Any other?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Stewart, very much. You can stand down.
Mayor Fougere, I have a quick, Mayor Fougere, because I'm traveling right now, I'm on voice. Is it possible just to hear the discussion? I won't speak, my phone will be on mute, but I get cut off the call and then I can't hear the conversation that happens after.
You can do that, but your participation is now done with your end of delegation, but you certainly can continue on if you like. Thank you for that. So,
yeah, thank you.
So to Councillor Young or Councillor Murray, do you want to move the motion, please? Either one?
Through the chair.
Councillor Murray?
I'll move the motion. Sure. So for a preamble to the motion, I'll just keep it very quick. This is sort of step one in addressing a lot of the issues that, not just that we discussed today around use of force report that Chief Bray talked about, the other challenges that the police service consistently run into. I'd just like to also say that the vast majority of calls that the police service responds to are not criminal in nature. And that's something that's been consistent for years and years now. So I will read the whereases and the be it resolved because I think they're quite important. The Regina Police Service works closely with many community organizations to support non-police-led efforts to help vulnerable in our community. The RPS often finds itself interacting with Regina residents who are experiencing moments of crisis due to depression, post-traumatic stress, severe addiction, and other health and psychiatric conditions, increasing the risk of harm to both themselves and others. Regina residents have made it clear that a greater investment should be made in health, mental health, community support systems, and rehabilitation through the justice system. And therefore be it resolved that the Regina Board of Police Commissioners provide the City Council and members of the public information on partnerships, programs, and activities of the Regina Police Service related to community policing, that Regina Police Service non-criminal code calls for service including police and crisis team, community engagement unit, central district, crime reduction strategy, cultural and community diversity unit, Citizens Police Academy, and that the Regina Intersectoral Partnership TRIP program all be part of that report. That the report included an analysis of the challenges facing the RPS and community partners' efforts to deal with our community's needs, and that the Board of Police Commissioners advocate to the provincial government for increased funding to these partnerships and programs to ensure those in crisis in Regina are receiving the proper interventions and support, and to improve the process of integrating response systems to improve community safety and well-being.
Thank you, Councillor Murray, for that. Do you have any additional comments?
Yeah, I would just like to make a friendly amendment. I'm hoping it's a friendly amendment, just to clarify that the comments through the justice system, that was put in because people are within the justice system. So I would make the amendment that we remove that last section through the justice system, just to make it clear that police would not be the ones administering these programs directly.
So you want the term "through the justice system" removed?
Yes, and if that's sort of amendment, it can, or if it's not a friendly amendment.
I think it'd be a friendly amendment. I don't. If anyone has an objection to that, we just remove that. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Young.
And
oh, sorry, you want to continue?
Sorry, I just had a question for Chief Bray, based on our delegation. The direct questions around our PAC team, the membership, and then disciplinary action that's occurred with the officer. If you could just speak to that.
Chief?
Sure. So yeah, I can. The question was about Constable Rob Power. Constable Power does not work in our PAC unit. He was in there for I think 2 years, but he doesn't work in there presently.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Young?
Thank you. I just want to add to what Councillor Murray said, that these motions and this one especially isn't meant to solve the problem. They're a first step, and we're going to be looking at what's happening now before we decide what we need to do going into the future. And community policing is a really important part of what happens in Regina, and I think it accounts for a lot of the stats that are in our perception survey. And so there are, as we heard today, some really important work that's being done in partnership with other services. And so I think it's important that we look at this report, that we ask all the questions we want to ask, and then we look at how can we move this forward so that more community collaboration and provincial government collaboration works together to give people what they need. There's one last point that I'll make. When we voice our concern about mental health needs and the effect of trauma on people in Regina, I think we should keep in mind that the Regina Police Service members and their families are part of our community, and they deal with stress and trauma daily, and their health and safety is on the line. They, like everyone else who deals with daily stress and trauma, are subject to mental health concerns and PTSD, even to name a few. Physical stress and injuries are also an important part of the job, and we need to take care of our first responders, and the police are an important first responder. We need to take care of them by recognizing the role they play in providing support for them. And we have provided some support for our service in past budgets. So I think I'm finished.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Young. Commissioner Pankratz.
Thank you. I totally 100% support this motion, particularly any change in legislation or policy or practice that removes from police responsibility dealing with addiction and mental illness. I just can't believe anything would be better if there was a clear-cut delineation between those issues and criminal behavior on occasion, because both result at times in criminal behavior which do require police presence. Having said that, the ability for the police to disassociate themselves from those incidents once criminal behavior is brought under control and the responsibility is left with one of the other social agencies would be an absolute blessing for policemen generally. The difficulty, however, is that the criminal behavior by addicts, whether it's in support of their addiction or criminal conduct that is associated with mental illness, is something that places the police in a very difficult position. They have to respond on the one hand, but they don't need to look after the results. So I'm supportive of this to the extent it'll help the police agencies do their job of policing, not being social workers.
Thank you, Commissioner, for that. Commissioner Yee, do you have any comments? Commissioner Yee?
No comments for me.
Okay. I fully am supportive of the motion, and I'll only add a couple of comments that we need to have a conversation about what the police actually do, and this is coupled with a previous motion as well, that the understanding of the type and scope and depth of work that police do beyond criminal code enforcement, and about 80%, I think, of the activities police do are not criminal code related. And I won't repeat what was said, but I'd only speak about the notion of community policing being a fundamental feature of Canadian police service, and certainly in Saskatchewan and in Regina, different than what you see in many ways in the United States. And it does put a strain on police service resources, to be sure. But part of the discussion is not so much the a defunding of police as much as an understanding of what I'll call downloading to the police service over time. That the police are the first person on the scene, so the police can deal with this issue. And the second part, or third motion of this report, speaks to a more holistic approach by the province to fund, in a more holistic way, the issues related to, I'll say, the community policing side, the non-criminal code calls that they receive related to drug addiction and health issues and those harming others. That's, I think, is a fundamental issue here. So we need to understand the role the police service plays, the resources that are needed to do this, and the source of funding for this primarily is not to defund the police. It's to have the province more effectively fund those services that are really not criminal code related activities that are really taking up a lot of time for the police service. So this conversation, being, I guess, the beginning of the conversation, this certainly will go to City Council for discussion as well, and we'll have another, of course, reports on this in the future. So this is the beginning of a very, very important conversation. Other comments on the report?
I'll close debate, Your Worship.
Okay, Councilor Murray, you want to close debate? Well, you don't really need to close debate here, but you can have another comment if you want, then we'll have a vote on it. So go ahead.
Sure, yeah, just a final comment that police in today's day and age are the bottom sort of net that catches everything. I believe Chief Bray has said it, the bottom of the toaster that catches all the crumbs. And they're the last sort of line, and they will always answer the call whenever there's a community member in need. But the reality is police officers are not social workers, and they're not mental health experts. We need those people who are experts in those fields to be able to attend those calls and provide the right care for those individuals in our community. Police are just inherently not set up to do that. So I believe this is a step one in addressing and recognizing that problem, and I appreciate support of it. Thanks.
I'll just add one thing. I remember hearing a story on national news a few weeks ago about a woman with the Canadian Mental Health Association, and she was saying that oftentimes they are afraid to go out on a call by themselves, and they would want the police with them to protect them and stabilize the environment. They're not equipped themselves to deal with volatile circumstances too. So this is not a very clear-cut proposal, but certainly the beginning of a good conversation as well. Councillor Murray and Councillor Young, thank you for putting this motion forward, and I would ask the clerk to do the roll call and the vote, please.
Councillor Murray?
In favor?
Councillor Young?
In favor?
Commissioner Pankratz?
In favor.
Commissioner Yee?
In favor?
Mayor Fougere?
I vote yes.
Motion passes.
Passed unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody. So a resolution for private session, please.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you very much. Anyone opposed to that? So we'll take a break as we get into the private session after we have a media scrum here. So thanks, everyone.